Her parents despised me before they even knew my name. That's the truth. By the time I set foot anywhere near their mansion, I was already the villain in their story. On the drive out there, fate decided to test me. A broken-down Rolls-Royce on the side of a lonely country road. An old woman standing helpless beside it. I should have kept going. I should have focused on the dinner I was already dreading. But that's not who I am. I pulled over, knowing full well what it would cost me. Knowing grease and sweat would betray me before I ever shook their hands. I arrived late, filthy, exhausted, ready for the look of disgust I'd been warned about. What I didn't expect was for that very same woman I'd stopped to help to arrive right behind me. But let me back up, because before I ended up covered in engine oil on that roadside, there was a phone call. A call that made everything heavier. It was Sophia, my girlfriend, my lifeline, the only reason I was putting myself through the circus at all. I was standing in my cramped one-bedroom apartment, clutching my phone, sweating through my only decent suit. "Mark," she whispered, "remember the plan. If my father asks what you do, you don't say mechanic. You say specialized automotive management. If my mother notices your hands, you tell her you've been woodworking. No oil. No transmission fluid. None of it. Promise me." I tried to laugh it off, tried to cut through the panic in her voice. "Soph, I fix cars. That's who I am. I built my shop from nothing. That's my pride." "I know," she said, and I could hear her fighting back guilt. "And I love that about you. But they won't see it. They won't understand. Please, Mark. Just for tonight. Just for me." I hated myself in that moment because I caved. I always caved for her. And so I agreed to be a man I wasn't. For a night. For her parents, Richard and Eleanor Prescott. Names that carried weight in circles I didn't belong to. I'd heard the stories. Their country club exclusivity, their silent disdain for anyone outside their bubble of old money. People like me didn't exist in their world unless we were polishing their cars or serving them wine. Still, I scrubbed my hands raw with a stiff brush until my knuckles burned. No amount of soap could erase years of grease. I stared at my reflection, tie straight, suit pressed, eyes tired but stubborn. Then I climbed into my truck. That truck was my pride. A vintage pickup I'd restored with my own two hands. Clean, gleaming, every bolt a testament to work that never lied. I drove out of the city, leaving behind cracked sidewalks and traffic lights, moving deeper into their world. Brick faded into stone. Gas stations gave way to horse fences. And soon, I was surrounded by estates, massive fortresses hidden behind iron gates and perfectly trimmed hedges. I checked my watch. For once in my life, I was early, and that's when I saw it. A Rolls-Royce silver cloud, two-tone, majestic, stranded on the shoulder. Hood open, engine smoking like a wounded beast. Beside it stood an older woman, pearls at her neck, tweed jacket neatly pressed, silver hair sculpted with care.
She didn't look panicked.
She looked annoyed, the way only the wealthy can look annoyed, like the universe had inconvenienced her personally. Sophia's voice echoed in my head. "Don't stop. Don't be late. Not tonight." But then the mechanic in me, the man I couldn't bury under soap or suits, spoke louder. That car was a masterpiece. And it was dying.
I pulled over.
Killed the engine. Left my jacket behind, stepped out in my shirt and tie. "Trouble, ma'am?" I asked carefully. Her eyes studied me. Intelligent, guarded. "It just stopped," she said crisply. Dreadful clunk, then smoke. "My driver should have been here, but he's lost, apparently. Mind if I take a look? I know these engines." She tilted her head, weighing me, then gave a single nod. I leaned into the hood, and there it was. The scent of oil, the metallic hum of history. My comfort zone. My language. Within 30 seconds, I spotted it, a frayed wire on the distributor cap. Classic issue. Quick fix. "It's a loose connection," I told her. "Give me 20 minutes. She'll be running smooth again." I hesitated, glanced at my shirt. "But it'll get messy." Her lips curled into the faintest smile. Young man, if you can bring her back to life, I don't care if you drown yourself in grease. That was all the permission I needed. I grabbed my toolkit from the truck, rolled up my sleeves, and went to work. My hands found their rhythm. Strip, reconnect, tape.
Clean, precise.
She asked questions, not about me, but about the car. She understood enough to appreciate my answers, and for once, my knowledge wasn't something to be hidden. When I finished, I wiped my hands on an old rag, looked at her, and nodded. All set, ma'am. Give her a try. The engine roared back to life, like a sleeping beast jolted awake. That deep, rolling thunder of a machine that was built to outlive generations. She turned the key, and the silver cloud purred, strong and steady. The woman's entire face transformed. Her smile was radiant, full of life and gratitude. Young man, you're a miracle worker, she declared, her voice warm now, stripped of the aristocratic frost I had first heard. I shook my head. Just knowing she's running again, that's enough for me. For a heartbeat, she held my gaze. Sharp eyes, intelligent eyes, but softened now with something close to respect. Then, with a graceful nod, she slipped behind the wheel. I watched her glide away down that country road, the Rolls-Royce gleaming in the fading light like a resurrected queen reclaiming her throne. I stood there, chest full, hands filthy, the satisfaction of a job well done warming me from the inside. But then, reality struck. My eyes dropped to my watch. Over an hour late. My hands were streaked black with grease. My suit pants ruined. And ahead of me, the dinner I had been dreading all along. The sun was sinking fast, spilling orange fire across the hills. 6 o'clock had come and gone. My stomach clenched. I started rehearsing excuses, none of them sounding anything but pathetic. An elderly woman. A broken-down classic car. An emergency. To me, it was truth. To them, it would sound like the flimsiest lie a desperate boy might make up. Sophia had been clear. Her parents valued one thing above all else, appearances. And right now, I looked like the ghost of every nightmare they'd ever had about their daughter dating beneath her. The entrance appeared at last, 2 towering stone pillars, no gate. Not security, but arrogance. A statement that said, "We have nothing to fear. This land is untouchable." The driveway wound on forever, crisp white gravel crunching beneath my tires. Every inch of the grounds manicured to perfection, every hedge, every blade of grass, screaming control and wealth. And then the house came into view. Calling it a house was an insult. It was a palace. A Georgian manor, 3 stories of brick and glass, glowing like a floating city with its hundreds of lit windows. I eased my old pickup into the circle drive. Parked at the edge, like a beaten-down fisherman's boat among sleek million-dollar yachts. Mercedes, BMWs, Bentleys. I killed the engine, but I didn't move. Just sat there gripping the steering wheel, heart hammering like it wanted out of my chest. I reached for the glove box, pulled out a paper napkin, scrubbed at the grease under my nails until my skin stung. Futile. The stains were too deep. My life was in my hands, written in black. Finally, I forced myself out. Every step toward that enormous door felt like a sentence. I pressed the bell. The chime echoed deep through the cavernous halls inside. The door opened. And there she was, Sophia. Her eyes found me, wide and horrified, her breath catching. "Mark," she whispered. "Oh my God. What happened to you?" I tried calling. I was so worried. I wanted to comfort her, but all I had were apologies.
Saf, I'm sorry.
I can explain. There was an old woman. Her car had broken down. I couldn't just drive past. I didn't get to finish. From the shadows of the hallway behind her, they appeared. Richard and Eleanor Prescott. The infamous parents. They looked like royalty. He tall, silver hair, smoking jacket cut like armor. She, every inch polished elegance, diamonds at her ears, pearls at her neck, her expression cold and sharp. Their eyes flicked from their daughter's panic to me. And then I saw it. That look. Not mere disapproval. Not even disdain. It was contempt. Pure and raw. Richard's voice sliced through the air, low and cutting. So, this is him. The mechanic. I tried. God, I tried. Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, I'm so sorry for being late. There was a woman on the road. Her vintage car broke down. I stopped to help. His hand rose. A silent command that shut me down instantly. We don't care for excuses, he said, each word polished with scorn. In our world, punctuality isn't optional. It is respect. And you have failed at the very first test. Eleanor stepped forward then, her eyes glinting cruelly as they raked over me. My hands, my suit, my sweat. A smile tugged at her lips, sweet and venomous all at once. Sophia told us you work with your hands. I see you've made no effort to hide it. How rustic. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Their words hit like bullets, leaving me stripped bare. Richard turned away, already done with me. His voice was final, cold as stone. I think it's best we reschedule this visit, Mark. Perhaps for a time when your friend can present himself with a shred of dignity. Until then, he dismissed me with his back. The conversation was over. The silver cloud came alive under her hands. That deep, powerful rumble rolled through the air like thunder echoing across open fields. The moment the engine settled into its steady hum, her face broke into the kind of smile that belonged to someone who had just been given back a piece of her soul. "Young man," she exclaimed, her voice rich with gratitude, "you are a miracle worker. How can I possibly repay you?" I shook my head, wiping my hands on a rag already soaked with black. Just knowing she's running again is all I need. Her sharp eyes lingered on mine. Intelligent.
Piercing.
And for a second, something softer flickered there. Respect. Maybe even admiration. She nodded, a graceful bow of acknowledgement, then slid behind the wheel. The Rolls moved forward with quiet majesty, its headlights glowing in the dusk, carrying her away like a queen in a chariot reborn. I stood there in the silence, watching her disappear, chest full of pride. That warm feeling lasted only a heartbeat. Then I looked down, my hands black with grease, my watch merciless. Over an hour late. The sun was bleeding into the horizon, a molten ball sinking behind the trees. 6 o'clock had come and gone. The dinner had already begun. My stomach tightened into a knot of dread. I whispered my excuse to myself as I drove the last stretch. An elderly woman. A broken car. I had to help. But even to my own ears it sounded flimsy. Pathetic. Like the kind of lie a desperate schoolboy invents to explain why he's late for class. Sophia had been clear. Her parents valued one thing above all else, appearances. And here I was, hands stained, pants ruined, dignity hanging by a thread. The estate rose before me, introduced by 2 massive stone pillars.
Nogate.
Just the kind of old money arrogance that said, "We don't need locks." No one would dare cross this line. The driveway unfurled like a white ribbon of crushed gravel, winding through manicured perfection. Trees, lawns, hedges, all sculpted to flawlessness. And then I saw it. The house. Calling it a house was an insult. It was a monument. A Georgian manor stretching wide and high, 3 stories of red brick and glittering glass, every window glowing warm gold like a floating palace adrift in the darkening countryside. I pulled my truck into the circle drive. Parked at the edge, my pride and joy suddenly reduced to a humble dinghy bobbing beside sleek German yachts, Mercedes, Audis, Bentleys. I didn't move. My hands clamped to the wheel, heart pounding so hard it shook me. I reached for the glove box, pulled out a crumpled napkin, and scrubbed desperately at the grease embedded in my skin. Pointless. The stains were part of me, etched deep into who I was. This was it. I stepped out. Every crunch of gravel under my boots felt deafening. The walk to that massive front door stretched out like a march to judgment. I pressed the bell. The sound echoed inside, low and sonorous, as though I had rung a cathedral bell instead of a door. The door swung open. And there was Sophia. Her eyes widened instantly, horror spreading across her beautiful face. "Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh my God, what happened? Are you hurt?" I tried calling, I was so worried. I shook my head, words tumbling out low and heavy.
I'm sorry, Saf.
"I can explain. There was an old woman, her car broke down. I had to stop and help." I never finished. From the grand hallway behind her, two figures emerged, drawn into the porch light like shadows stepping into focus. Richard and Eleanor Prescott.
I had heard about them.
But no description prepared me for the sight. Richard, tall, silver hair, his smoking jacket cut so perfectly it looked like it had been born on him. His face was carved stone, aristocratic and cold. Eleanor, flawless in her pearls and diamonds, her elegance weaponized into something sharper than steel. Their eyes fell on Sophia first, on her panic. Then they turned to me, and in that instant I knew. This wasn't mere disapproval. It was contempt. The kind of contempt that doesn't need words because it has already passed judgment. Richard spoke, his voice low and polished, every syllable like glass cutting the air. "So, this is him, the mechanic." I scrambled for my lines, the speech I had rehearsed burning away like paper in fire. "Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, I'm so sorry for being late. There was a woman on the road, her vintage car broke down, and He raised a hand, a gesture of command that shut me down before I could breathe. "We do not care for excuses," he said, his voice calm but brutal. "In our world, punctuality is not optional. It is the foundation of respect. And you, young man, have failed at the very first step." Eleanor moved closer, her eyes raking over me like cold blades. She studied my hands, the grease, the dirt on my suit. And then she smiled. Not a kind smile, a cruel one. "Sophia told us you work with your hands," she said softly, venom lacing her tone. "I see you've made no effort to hide it. How quaint." I couldn't answer, couldn't defend myself. Their words had stripped me bare, left me standing there exposed and humiliated. Richard's voice returned, final and absolute. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at his daughter. "I think it's best if we reschedule this visit, Mark. Perhaps for a time when your friend can present himself with the dignity this house requires." Then he turned his back. A dismissal so complete, so final, it didn't need another word, defeat. It was a taste I'll never forget, cold, metallic, bitter as ash. I had failed. I had walked into their world, tried to stand tall inside it, and lost before I could even open my mouth. I looked at Sophia one last time. Her eyes were wet, desperate, full of a pain that mirrored my own. I wanted to tell her everything I couldn't say aloud. "I'm sorry. I tried. I wanted to be enough for you, but I never will be in their eyes." That look was my silent apology, my surrender. I turned, ready to vanish into the night. The porch stretched before me like a stage I'd been dragged across and booed off. My future with Sophia already felt like it was slipping away, floating higher and colder, unreachable as the stars overhead. And then sound. A sound I knew by heart. That rumble.
Deep.
Resonant.
Familiar.
A Rolls-Royce V12. Alive and breathing. Headlights burst across the lawn, cutting through the dark, flooding us all in their sharp glare. My body froze, one hand gripping the railing. My heart kicked once, hard, like it recognized hope even before my mind could.
I knew that sound.
I knew that car. The silver beast glided into the drive, a vision of polished chrome and quiet power. It rolled to a stop behind my battered truck, the contrast between them almost absurd, royalty parking beside a farmhand. No one moved. Not Richard. Not Eleanor. Not Sophia. Even the air seemed to hesitate. The Prescotts' faces twisted into annoyance, their smug triumph interrupted by an intrusion they couldn't yet name. Sophia's face shifted too, her grief now replaced with something searching, something unsure. Then came the soft click of the driver's door. A chauffeur emerged, dark suit, perfect gloves, every movement practiced, refined. He circled the car, reached for the rear door, and opened it with reverence. A pale hand appeared first. Elegant.
Steady.
A single sapphire ring, massive, commanding, caught the light and held it like a prisoner. Then she stepped out. Her. The woman from the side of the road. But here, under the lights of her own kingdom, she wasn't just a stranded traveler. She wasn't just an elderly lady in distress. She was something far greater. Mother. Eleanor's voice cracked, shrill, her composure shattering. What on earth are you doing here, in that old thing? I told you the driver would bring you in the town car. But, Matilda Prescott. Sophia's grandmother, the matriarch everyone whispered about with awe and dread, ignored her entirely. She didn't spare her daughter a single glance. Her eyes swept the porch with surgical precision. Richard's stiff posture. Eleanor's guilt wrapped in pearls. Sophia's tear-streaked face. And finally me. Grease-stained hands. Dirt on my knees. Suit rumpled. Pride hanging by a thread. She studied me the way a master craftswoman studies an object, examining not just flaws but the truth of its making. Her gaze didn't carry judgment. It carried weight, consideration, calculation. And then she smiled.
Slow.
Knowing. A smile filled with humor, but deeper still, with respect. Her voice rang out, strong and sharp as a bell. Richard. Eleanor. The effect was instant. The mighty Prescotts, rulers of this house, shrank before her. In that moment, they weren't lords of the manor. They were children caught in the act. She lifted her jeweled hand toward me. This young man you're so eager to throw off your porch, do you know what he's just done? He spent nearly an hour on his back in the dirt, fixing my car. Your car, Richard, if you'd had the sense to appreciate it, instead of leaving me stranded like your driver so incompetently managed to do. Richard's throat worked, his voice weak, nothing like the cold authority he had thrown at me moments ago. Mother, we know, he arrived late. He's a mess. Matilda cut him off with a flick of her hand. A queen silencing a courtier. A mess? Her eyes gleamed with dangerous amusement. This is not a mess, Richard. This, her gaze swept over my stained hands, is the mark of a man who works. A man who stops for a stranger when others would drive by, even when it costs him dearly. She turned her icy gaze on Eleanor. Character, Eleanor. Something you cannot purchase. Something I see far too little of in this house. They were silent. Richard. Eleanor. Reduced to stone figures in their own home. Matilda shifted, and now all her attention was mine. That smile returned, softer this time, warm and disarming. You have my gratitude, young man. You gave me your skill, your time, and most importantly, your kindness, without asking for a single thing in return. And then she did something no one on that porch expected. She reached for my arm. Her hand was light but firm, her grip surprisingly strong. And just like that, she made a declaration far louder than words. Come, Mark, she said, her voice carrying both command and delight. I believe I've arrived just in time to spare you a painfully dull evening. You'll join me for dinner. I climbed the steps at her side. Not as the mechanic dismissed. Not as the intruder rejected. But as the chosen guest of Matilda Prescott, the only woman in that dynasty who made titans tremble. And in that instant, everything changed. The interrogation I had feared never came. It ended before it even began. But as I turned and saw the pale, shaken faces of Richard and Eleanor, I realized something even more chilling. A trial was about to begin, but it wasn't mine. This time it was theirs. And their judge had just arrived. I stepped across the threshold of the Prescott mansion not as a beggar asking for acceptance, not as the late and disgraced guest they thought me to be, but as the honored escort of the one woman whose power in this house was beyond question. The air inside was cool, heavy with the scent of polished wood and beeswax, the faint perfume of roses from some unseen vase, and the delicious aroma of duck roasting somewhere deep within the house. The marble beneath my boots gleamed under the light. A butler stood in the foyer, impossibly tall, impossibly thin, his face the mask of perfect service. But even perfection cracks. His eyes flicked down to my grease-stained hands, the rumpled suit, the dirt still clinging to my knees. For the briefest second, horror flashed across his face. And then discipline. Neutrality returned. His eyes shifted to the woman at my side. "Matilda, you've returned," he said softly, with the kind of reverence priests save for their saints. "Yes, Henderson," she replied, brisk and cheerful. "This is Mr. Mark O'Connell. Please set another place at the table. At my right hand." It was subtle, almost nothing. Just a command. But the butler's eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. That seat was no ordinary seat. It was the throne beside the Queen, the place of honor. Richard had long coveted it. Tonight it would belong to me. Behind us, Richard and Eleanor followed in silence, their regal confidence gone. They no longer looked like masters of this estate. They looked like children trailing their mother after scolding. Sophia brought up the rear. Her eyes were wide, shining, her lips pressed tight, as if holding back laughter and relief all at once. We entered the dining hall. It was absurd in its grandeur. A table stretched so long it could have landed an airplane, yet only 5 settings gleamed in the candlelight. Gold-rimmed china, crystal glasses, silver polished, so bright it mirrored the flames. I sat at the seat Matilda indicated, the seat of honor, and for a moment I felt like an imposter, a mechanic lost in a royal court, somehow mistaken for a prince. And then the performance began. It wasn't a dinner. It was theater. 90 minutes of quiet, devastating theater, directed by Matilda Prescott herself. Every move calculated, every word a blade. She ignored her children. Not once did she turn to them. Not once did she acknowledge their existence. Her attention never strayed from me. She didn't ask me about wealth or bloodline, or what future I could provide her granddaughter.
No. She asked about me.
"So, Mark," she began, once Henderson poured us both a rich ruby wine. "Tell me, that silver cloud, a magnificent car, but temperamental, isn't it? The fuel pump alone is a nightmare. How does one keep the pressure steady?" I blinked. For the first time that evening, I felt steady ground beneath me. My voice found strength. And I told her about engines, about craft, about patience and art, about the beauty of a carburetor, the satisfaction of hand-forging a part, the quiet thrill of coaxing life back into a forgotten machine. I didn't speak like a man covered in grease. I spoke like an artisan, someone who loved what he built. And she listened, truly listened. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, impossibly focused, never left mine. She asked questions, insightful ones. Her interest was real, her curiosity genuine. Richard, unable to stand being invisible, finally snapped. His voice cut through the air too loud, too desperate. "Speaking of investments, Mother, the market for pre-war classics is collapsing. Hardly the time to." Matilda silenced him with a single wave of her jeweled hand. She didn't even look at him. "Richard, please. Tonight, we are speaking of things that matter. Tangible things. Things built by real hands."
Mark is a man who creates. He repairs.
He saves what others would discard. "Tell me, when was the last time you built anything at all?" The words hit harder than a slap. Richard recoiled, cheeks darkening. He shrank back into silence, wounded pride burning, but too cowardly to flare again. Later, Eleanor tried to recover some dignity. "The duck is exquisite, isn't it, Mother? I had it flown in from New York, just this morning." Matilda lifted her fork, took a delicate bite, and chewed with thought. She swallowed, then turned not to her daughter, but to me. "It's good," she said calmly. "But you know, Mark, a meal, no matter how fine, cannot compare to the satisfaction of an engine restored. An old machine, brought back from the brink by skilled hands, now that is nourishment for the soul. Don't you agree?" I smiled. For the first time that evening, I felt the rhythm of her game. "Yes, ma'am."
Ido.
And so it went. Course after course, the meal unfolded not as dinner, but as a coronation. I was no longer the outsider. I was the guest of honor, the man at her right hand. And they, the Prescotts, were left to watch in silence as their mother exalted the man they had mocked. Across the table, Sophia's eyes met mine. They glistened, full of love, full of pride. Pride so deep it made my chest ache with something fierce and radiant. She was seeing me as I was, and as I had always wanted her to see me, not shamed, not diminished, but celebrated. When the final plates were cleared and the coffee poured, Matilda made her move. Her voice was soft, but her words struck like thunder. "It has been a very long time," she said, her gaze sweeping down the table at her silent children, "since I have sat here and had a conversation of substance, of integrity. Tonight gives me hope for the future of this family." Then her eyes locked on mine. They sharpened, carrying a glint of something more. Not just respect, strategy, purpose. And I knew this night was not finished. "Mark," she said, her voice calm, steady, but carrying the weight of history. "My late husband, Sophia's grandfather, was a man consumed by his love for classic automobiles. His collection, his pride and joy, has sat untouched in the West Garage for nearly 2 decades. Machines worth fortunes. Machines unlike anything else in the world. And for 20 years they've been left to gather dust, slowly decaying in silence. No one in this family had the interest or the skill to care for them." Her eyes locked onto mine. The warmth of grandmotherly charm shifted into something sharper. Authority.
Command.
She leaned forward, her voice now that of a CEO delivering an offer no one could refuse. "I believe," she said, her lips curving into a triumphant smile, "I've just found the man to take it on. Tomorrow morning, we will discuss the terms of your new role, the official curator of the Prescott Automobile Collection." My jaw dropped. I must have looked like a fool, but I couldn't stop myself. I glanced at Richard, at Eleanor. Their faces were frozen, pale, horrified, like paintings of disbelief. Matilda hadn't just accepted me. She hadn't just welcomed me into her family. She had placed me in charge of the crown jewels. The greasy mechanic they tried to throw out of their home had just been entrusted with their father's priceless legacy. The silence that followed was breathtaking. Not tense. Not fragile. No. This silence was deafening in its finality. It was the sound of their entire world being overturned, their judgment exposed as hollow, their arrogance dismantled. I looked at Sophia. Her eyes shimmered with radiant joy. It wasn't just happiness. It was vindication. The man she loved, the man they dismissed as common, had just been knighted by the queen of their empire. Richard looked stricken, as though Matilda's words had struck him like a fist. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, useless. Eleanor sat frozen. Her glass of wine halted midair, her face pale as marble. They had lost. In their home, at their table, they had been utterly defeated. Their judgment had been judged and found wanting. I finally managed to speak, my voice trembling with humility. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say. That is an incredibly generous offer. I'd be honored." Matilda waved her hand, dismissive yet smiling, her eyes sparkling with delight. "Nonsense. This is not generosity, Mark. It's practicality. I am preserving my husband's legacy from turning to dust in the hands of people who see only dollar signs. You see the soul in the machine. That is a gift that cannot be bought." Hours later, after long conversation about engines and the elegant beauty of a Duesenberg, Sophia and I rose to leave. But Richard and Eleanor weren't finished. In the grand foyer, they made one last desperate attempt. "Mother, you cannot be serious," Eleanor hissed, her voice sharp with fury. "You cannot actually plan to give this grease monkey access to Father's collection. It's priceless. It's our family's heritage." And then I saw Matilda change. The warmth vanished. The soft grandmother disappeared. In her place stood a towering figure of cold, regal power. Her voice was ice. Her presence, terrifying. "Eleanor," she said, each syllable a blade, Let me make this perfectly clear. This family's heritage is not its cars, its houses, or its stocks. This family's heritage was meant to be character, integrity, a quality this young man has in abundance, and a quality you and your husband, her eyes cut to Richard with contempt sharp enough to wound, have shown a shocking lack of tonight. I stood frozen. Even I stepped back from her sheer force. Then she turned, softening only for me. Mark has my full and complete confidence. He is skilled. He is decent. He is kind. He is exactly what this family needs. And you will show him the respect he has earned. Do I make myself clear? Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, mother. Her eyes fixed on the floor. Matilda smiled again, the storm passing. She looked at me as though nothing had happened. Henderson will give you the keys to the west garage in the morning. Have fun. And with that, the war was over. The months that followed were a quiet revolution. Our wedding was beautiful, joyful. My in-laws attended, their smiles stiff, their behavior polished. But I knew the truth. They were terrified of Matilda, terrified of her favor resting squarely on me. The morning after our honeymoon, Sophia and I walked into the west garage for the first time. It was a cathedral, a temple of steel and dust and forgotten glory. Bugattis, Ferraris, American muscle legends lined up in silence, waiting to breathe again. I felt it in my bones. Purpose.
Not a job.
Not an obligation. A calling. Matilda insisted that Richard and Eleanor join me there at times.
She wanted them to watch.
To see my hands stained in honest grease, explaining carburetors, timing chains, the delicate rebirth of engines. It wasn't just work. It was her quiet revenge. A reminder of the man they had tried to reject. Thriving, honored, triumphant. Months later, Sophia and I took one of the restorations, a 1965 Jaguar E-Type, out into the countryside. The sun was falling low, painting the sky gold and crimson. The air was cool, the engine purred, and Sophia sat beside me, her face glowing with happiness. As the road stretched ahead, I thought back to that first dreadful night. The nerves, the fear, the urge to hide who I was, to present myself as someone respectable. And yet, it hadn't been wealth or pretense that won this life. It was kindness, a simple act of honesty. A mechanic stopping to help a stranger with a broken car. That was all it took. That was everything. My victory wasn't in their humiliation. It was in the truth. The truth that I hadn't been accepted despite who I was. I had been welcomed, celebrated, lifted because of it. Grease stains and all. And in that Jaguar, with Sophia's hand resting on mine, I knew I had found more than love. I had found family. A family built not on appearances, but on character. And that is the only heritage worth preserving.